Hello, this is Irene with SaugaTalks. Hello, I do hope everyone's doing really well, because I am privileged today. I have a fantastic guest, and we announced the topic, the human side of innovation. So with me here, Philippe Boulanger. Philippe, if I'm not butchering your name, welcome to the show.
Well, you did well. You didn't butcher. It's actually the difficulty is when I'm in the US because I cannot pronounce it Boulanger, which is the French way.
Mhm.
So I have to say Boulanger. And then
Oh,
when I
no,
say
that's too far. No, that's too far. So Boulanger it is. Yeah. Welcome, Philippe,
yeah,
very
but
much. Yep. Mhm.
yeah, but you know when you go in a restaurant and you want to reserve a table and they ask your name, at the front desk,
You're in
then
trouble.
if I say Boulanger, they are in trouble. Okay, so either I switch to Boulanger or I just say baker, which is the exact translation in English.
Exactly. I was thinking about this. Yes, exactly. Good. Whatever works. Absolutely. So you're being creative. You're being creative, Philippe, with your name. And today, when we talk about innovation, right, I do want to start with very open beginning because you're an expert in innovation. You're a global speaker. You are an entrepreneur. And I know you're advising many businesses. You are involved with so many ventures. So your experience is absolutely precious when it comes to innovation, culture, technology, people, humans. Okay, we'll talk a lot about all these aspects, but let's start somewhere. So, to me, innovation, how is it different from, let's say, invention, creativity? Because people use these words interchangeably. So, please shed some light for us.
And you're right, Irene. People do not understand the difference between those words. And if you ask most managers in companies the difference between creativity and invention and innovation, you say, yeah, well, it's almost the same. Well, actually, there is a big gap, and let me explain that gap. Creativity. I mean, anyone could be creative, and we were creative as kids. If you remember well, when you were a kid, you would use a piece of wood, and it would become a sword, and then you would start it to be on a virtual horse, and you became Zorro. Okay, actually, I was becoming Zorro because this was more a boys' game, and we have lost our creativity after a while, and definitely inside companies. Actually, it's not that we have lost; it has been displaced and it has been misused. And in some cases, it has been just shut down. So creativity, anyone can be creative at any point. We can be creative in writing fiction. We can be creative in music, in painting, in sculpture. I mean, in many fields. And we can be creative as well, technically, finding some solutions to problems that we discover. And typically, being creative is part of the design thinking methods that we have, which is an early stage of finding some solutions to a problem. And this creativity could be used to be an invention, meaning you could have some patents if you are creative enough, because it has not been done by anyone else before. So you can patent a very creative idea. And if you stop there, well, you won't go very far, because there is a big difference between having an idea, even if this idea is very new, and executing that idea to put it on the market or to use it inside your company. Let's say you have created a new process which allows you to go faster or more efficiently. Well, if it is just an idea, it doesn't help. So innovation in that respect is to put in execution the ideas that you have had. And to put in execution goes through multiple steps. Basically, you need to validate your idea. You need to experiment on your idea. You need to check that it is acceptable by your colleagues or your market. And this is why creativity and innovation are pretty far away. And innovation very frequently start out of creativity. Even if it is incremental or whether it's incremental or disruptive, it starts from there. Okay?
talking about technology innovations a lot. Okay, there are all types of innovations, as you mentioned. There's disruptive, there's incremental, there's business model innovation, right? There is process improvement innovation, there is product innovation. There are all kinds of ways company can go for. Let's focus on us as humans. So let's bring some human element to it. Where do you see we go?
And let's come back on creativity. If we speak about the human side of innovation, and if we say that creativity is definitely a key part to start an innovation process, then we should consider how people are creative or not anymore. And one of the big issues we have in companies today, when we speak about innovation culture, is the fact that people usually are prevented to be creative. If they come with an idea, they might be told, come on, it's not your business. And depending on the way it is said, it could become a very big issue. And if you come to your manager and you say, you know what, I've got that idea and I'd like to investigate. And your manager says the first time, I don't believe in it, stop it. Worse, if he does it in front of other people, he will shut you down. And this is called, and we come to a bias, which is called learned helplessness. So basically, you are not going to contribute anymore because you know that your ideas are not valued the way they should be by your manager. So in terms of culture, definitely the manager has to create the environment in which ideas could be shared without the fear, to be judged or punished or mocked by the team or other people. Instead, the key point here is to say, okay, you've got this idea, let's define how we could validate it, how we can make sure that it makes sense. And it is a very different story. Some companies have this culture. I could take the example, for instance, of Amazon, where they have the institutional yes. Basically, if you have to propose an idea, the manager has a yes by default. And if he wants to say no, he has to create a report that goes up into the hierarchy. So actually, the burden is on the manager. However, since it is a yes by default, it means that if you propose an idea, you will have to implement it. So you better propose good ideas that you have started to validate upfront. Otherwise, you are in trouble. And then it becomes a different story because you don't have this this learned helplessness, because you know that you are in a welcoming environment.
Disruptive versus evolutionary versus incremental innovation, because let's focus on larger companies where, again, it's easy to say, right? It's very hard to go through all the levels of approval, through all the hierarchical steps which exist in most companies. Not every company is Amazon and Google. Okay, many companies built in very hierarchical way, and that's where innovation we know struggles. All right. So what you're advising to your client? What's the best approach? Where does Innovator go?
So for me, the absolute key is to create some experiments, such as people do not have any opinion anymore on a project or an idea, but they have some facts and data. So, and for me, this is a magic bullet, the magic wand, whatever we can say it. Every time I have been using experimentations in order to provide this kind of validation, it worked. Or if it didn't work, then it was a good time to forget about the project. Okay, so better to validate anyway. And this is the one of the methods which is used, which has been called lean startup for entrepreneur, but it can be used inside big companies as well to validate issues. I've been using this from very small companies to larger companies, and in both cases it works. And we've got some examples in the industry which are pretty known. If you take, for instance, big companies like SpaceX. Okay, SpaceX, Elon Musk has designed from the start a budget for experiments. And I would have we could say failure, but it's not the case actually. Experiments to learn how to make things working without putting at risks the payloads of the rockets, which includes some human in some cases. And typically, when you look at what has been done by SpaceX, they started to make some tests with the rockets just to control every aspect of the launch and landing back on Earth. And you see in the videos which have been published that they start with igniting the rocket and stop it. So they control the rocket. Then they make 2 or 3 meters and they come back. And then they go up to maybe 50 meters. And then the rocket is staying at the same level in a stationary flight at the exact same level, and then come back and land. So even rockets could use experimenting in order to validate the approach. Now, if I go to very small companies and very small companies who are handled by entrepreneurs, they're in the same situation. They can validate their ideas. I have a friend who is a specialist of sales. He's a speaker as well, and he's a specialist of sales. And he explained that he did an experiment with one of his friends owning a restaurant on how to sell drinks in the restaurant. And they did what we call some cohorts. So basically, the first cohort was the first week where they didn't propose anything to customers. And then they recorded the number of drinks that were ordered by customers just before the meals. And then they started to ask a question. Second week, they started to ask a question. Would you like to have a little drink? And then we see a jump of sales of 27%. The third week, the question was different, was what would you like as a drink? Which makes the assumption they wanted to have something, okay? Mm-hmm. And then sales are jumping up to 37% if I remember well. Up to the end, which is week 5 or 6, in which they say, okay, we have a specific cocktail designed by our mixologist specialist, or maybe you want something else as a drink. And then sales are jumping up to 77%. So even in a restaurant, you can experiment to validate some ideas and how to increase your sales or your retention, this kind of stuff. There is absolutely no limit as soon as you try to experiment.
Wonderful. It's called consultative sales, right? It's called when seller becoming part of the customer experience, and based on, of course, on knowledge about the customer. Yes, that's where data come in, right? So larger company, right, should not act blindly. They should know who they target and what's the best way to experiment. Otherwise, again, nobody has endless funds. So let's talk about some return on investment.
The key point when it's a failure, it's because you didn't make the right experiment in order to validate the project to start with. Okay, the rule that we have, and I was speaking about Lean Startup a little bit earlier, which is Lean Startup is the methodology which is used by entrepreneurs to create a startup. Okay, in a way which is very lean and efficient. The same principle is being used by big companies, and I can take the example of Google, which has been using a method. I think let me explain it. Let me explain the concept, but it is very similar to Lean Startup. The concept is the following: let's say you have a project which is to have a monkey giving a talk. Actually, who is going to say a play of Shakespeare piece on the top of pedestal. You say that pedestal in English? Of a pedestal which is, let's say, 8 feet high. Where do you start? Do you start to build the pedestal because it's easy to do? it's easy to do. So you can say, okay, let's do it, such as it is done, and we don't have to take care of that anymore, right? So many people will say that. Actually, the strategy being used is monkey first.
Mhm.
Why? Because if you cannot have your monkey starting to speak, the entire project collapses. So there is no need to do the pedestal. So it means you're going to start with the most difficult part, such as you're going to de-risk the project by taking the first most difficult part. You are
Oh,
creating an experiment to validate the most difficult part, and from you learn from this experiment, you will decide if you continue or if you change the project or if you stop the project.
how interesting. In US, we call this approach the opposite, low-hanging fruit. You know, you start with project, which is the easiest, less mission critical. Okay, you experiment in the areas where your business is not depending on every second, you know, for every customer. You start with easy way and you demonstrate success and then you progress.
Okay, so which could be another track
Mhm,
as well,
mhm,
and
mhm, mhm,
which has to be used in some cases. So there is no
mhm,
point about that. But the point, let's say you have a very new project and you want to get a full understanding of that. This is definitely a way to go. So you will start with this most difficult part. And once you have experimented on that, you will go to the next one, the next most difficult part.
mhm, mhm.
So if your project cannot work because it is impossible to make it work, and this is why it's called monkey first, because obviously it's very difficult to have a monkey speaking and acting on Shakespeare, um, then it's better to stop as early as possible. So if you have to fail,
Mhm,
it's
mhm.
better to know it as early as possible, which gives you some bandwidth to try on another project. So if you are failing on a project that comes to fruition, I mean, if you go through a full um, implementation of a project and you have not tested the most critical part, today this is foolish.
Mhm.
So a project that should not happen to the market definitely should be stopped as early as possible. And I've seen crazy projects like that. I've seen crazy projects in the Silicon Valley that should have never gone to the market, but still people have been funded by investors. It's really amazing. So and so it was not the technology usually which was the issue, by the way. It was what we call the product market fit, meaning that the product had no market.
Because creating market is the most expensive time and effort exercise we can think of. Exactly what you mentioned makes a lot of sense. You know, fail fast, fail often, right? You will have time to recover and regain your reputation, because let's not
Yeah.
forget about people's ego there. So let's talk about people in this cycle. Yeah, how they feel and how we can help them to kind of find the new ground once this happens. Mhm.
Yeah, and if we speak about people, we have a mechanism which is built in, which is the reward mechanism inside our brain. And
Mhm.
you know that every time we succeed on something, we have this shoot of neurotransmitters which makes us happy for a while. Okay, and this while could be pretty short actually. So there is this is why it's better to have a succession um, of small successes, because you will have regular shoots of good chemicals in your body, and it will make you happy. It could become an addiction, by the way. But I think this is one of the principle of the agile methods, with Scrum and so on, where you are doing some sprints and some small tasks every day, because every task which is completed is a success.
It brings
And every
satisfaction, yes, satisfaction to our heart
absolutely.
and the understanding you have done something right today. That's a lot. Yep, yep. Mhm.
Exactly. So if you do things right every day, so you've got your satisfaction level, which is kept high. And this is very important for the motivation of people, because, as you know, action and success brings motivation. It's not the contrary. It's not motivation that brings action, but action that brings motivation. So the more action you have, which is successful, the more motivated you will be. And it is a fundamental of agile methods, and the lean startup method in that respect, or the monkey first method in that respect, is in some ways a way to have people addicted to small successes. It's a real addiction, actually. Yeah.
Definitely. Yep, we felt in our lucky days, right? We felt this drive because again, something went really right and you wanna, like you said, you wanna ride this wave for longer, and yet they don't last those moments. We have to come up, right, with the next big thing and achieve that. Isn't it wonderful for us, for humans? Beautiful.
Yeah,
So yeah. What I hear, Philip, what I hear is that people, though, they're not very innovative by nature. You know, some of us, really small percentage, breaking the rules, wanting to see something happen, right? And
okay.
yet, many of us, yep.
So we come to another issue in that respect about when you speak about being innovative and breaking the rules. So you've got then two kind of people. You've got the entrepreneur-minded people and the one who are employees. It's a different story. Entrepreneurs usually are ready to break the rules because it is the survival of their company which is at stake, right? And when I say survival, it's a keyword. If you are an employee, it's your survival as an employee in the company which is at stake. So breaking the rule while you're an employee of a company might not be a good idea. It depends on the culture of the company. And the survival mechanisms are deeply rooted in our brain since the beginning of, how should I say it? Actually, it's something which is common to every living animal. It's survival. We are fighting for our survival. And it translates today not into physical survival, even if we are taking care of that, but our survival inside companies, because we need to get money back to be fed and to have a roof over our heads. So survival is absolutely critical. So now, if you are not an entrepreneur and you are an employee, the situation is, am I in a situation that allows me to break the rules? If your company doesn't allow it, if you are framed every time and you are put back in the mold, and we are used to say in France, I'm used to say actually, to be fair, that only pies are comfortable in a mold. It's more funny in French actually, because in that case, in French, pie means as well somebody who is a little bit dumb, but it doesn't translate in English. Anyway, the idea is that when you are working inside a company, you are asked to be compliant with all the rules of the company, which is normal as long as you are in a production mode, because you need to deliver. And what is important for the company is to deliver the products or services, such as we get money back from the customers, right? And profits, it's turnover and profits. It's critical for the company to survive by itself. So if you are not compliant with the rules, then you have an issue. And what I used to have as an image is a team rowing in a boat. You see all those people being in sync and rowing in sync, okay? If one of them is creative or innovative, the way you want to take it,
all of a sudden, right? Without giving any warning,
suddenly not giving any warning, and he find a way to row twice faster. What is happening?
Not so good. Not so good.
Not so good, because the team needs to be completely in synchronization in order for the boat to speed up. So such a guy, either we will tell him, you know what, you are toxic for the team, and you move out.
We know what happens. Yes, you voted off that island. Yes.
Exactly. Other, we say, okay, don't do that again. Come back into the same rhythm as the team. Either, if you are in a culture of innovation, you could say, oh, you might have an interesting idea. Please go validate your idea in a different place.
On your own boat first, right? And then come back, yes.
So yeah, or on a specific team on which you are going to test your idea. And if it works, then we are going to deploy it. And then all the boats of the company will row at a new
your pace,
team, which
right?
is exactly the new pace.
Yep.
So this image is pretty powerful, actually, because people in production, they understand that they've got to row to deliver the products and the services, and we don't want to disrupt them.
Yeah.
If we have to disrupt them, it has to be another team preparing the disruption.
Yeah.
Because the guys do not want to be at risk in their survival, and they are in a race. They have to be usually the first, or they have to be at par with the competition. So they cannot take any risk in production.
We don't want any risks in production. We want our banks working. We want our cars driving. We want our warm water coming to our house when we need it. So we don't want experiments, with water pipelines or anything like that, right? What we want is exactly. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So basically, the experimenting team or exploration team, as we call it as well, will validate either the technicalities, the technology, or the new markets. And once this is validated, then you've got, and you have defined the prototype that works and so on, then you give the baby to another team that will increase the quality, such as it could be deployed for people in production. Okay, so basically you've got three kinds of teams. You've got the explorers, experimenting and validating the ideas, then the team that is getting ready for deployment, and the production team, which is using the output of the deployment team. If you do that, you've got a pipe. You've got a pipe from exploration to production and decreasing the risk, because of course you don't want to break production. So it could be new products, it could be new services, it could be new processes, whatever. Anything that is validated then becomes something. Now, if you don't have any exploration team, what could happen? The guy who is trying to go twice faster in the boat, we could tell him, okay, guy, you are toxic, you move out. He could create his own startup.
And they do. And they do.
And they do. Yeah. And they do. And this is exactly what is happening in companies where you don't have any culture of innovation, or actually a fake culture of innovation. We could speak about innovation washing, where people will get frustrated because their ideas cannot go through. Nobody wants to test them, and they say, okay, you know what? With what I know, what I've discovered, nobody wants to listen to me inside the company. Not a problem for me. I will go outside. I will find some investors if I need, and I will pursue my idea. What usually happens is that those people have kind of validated their idea some ways before, and when they go out of the company out of frustration, they know exactly what they are doing.
Beautiful.
And and it's a miss in that case. So it's how to in that case, it's how to create from a frustrated innovator inside such companies a successful entrepreneur. But not everyone has this capability of becoming an entrepreneur. So you've got many frustrated people inside companies today because they have this feeling they cannot express themselves. And since they don't have the entrepreneurial spirit, they will prefer to stay in the company and to shut down, such as they can survive in their business, in their job, actually.
But that's bad. That's bad for people's health. That's bad for organizations. That's bad for society, because more disengaged people you have, people who work 9 to 5, they don't care about what's happening around them. That stumbles our, collective progress. So let's leave the message out there, Philip, how to avoid, because many organizations, they're somewhere in the middle, right? They're not very innovative, and they're not hopefully horribly retro, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And this is where the management and when I say the management, I should say the CEO of the company has a huge responsibility. I worked with a Japanese company called Sony. Sony,
I've heard of them. Yeah, a
know
little
it.
bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. So Sony, the way it was handled was it was interesting, because the validation of a product was done in Japan, in the Japanese market, and once the Japanese market wanted to buy it, then the product was as well sold and marketed in other regions like the US or Europe. So this is the way historically Sony has been working. And since they were speaking about the products already when they were marketed in Japan, but they were not yet available in the US or in Europe, people were making fun about Sony by saying Sony means soon or next year. Okay, because the products were not coming that fast. Anyway, the former president of Sony was the guy who hired me actually within Sony, Kunitake Ando. He told me one day that the fish always roots by its head. And I'm not
Yep.
sure I'm using the right translation here.
No, in many
Anyway,
cultures there's this saying. Yes, of course. Yeah. Makes sense.
Okay.
Yep.
So it means that you've got a duty.
Yeah,
to show the
leadership, right?
example.
Leadership duty,
Exactly.
right? Yep.
It's a leadership duty to show the example. And if you are showing a bad example as a CEO, it will spread inside the company as a bad example. Because when people look at the CEO and they say, "Oh, he's doing that, okay, we will follow, no problem." At the same time, if the example is good, like you've got some values in the company and you are respecting the values and you are very strict about respecting the values, then people will follow as well. So the mission of the CEO is definitely to create the innovation culture, not only by saying things about the innovation culture or saying things about the innovation, but some facts. Typically, I was speaking about having some exploration teams inside the company, or the innovation spirit, meaning that anyone can express an idea and then we could discuss how to validate the idea. If in the facts nobody is doing it, then it is fake. So the CEO has to be very, very cautious about the fact that any innovation direction he's giving is translated into facts, into budgets, and into actions.
There's this saying, do as I say, not as I do. Yes, so listen to what I'm saying, but never mind what I'm doing, actually. And that actually applies for everyone, for CEOs, for parents, for
Exactly.
every leader out there. Yep.
Exactly. And I've seen so many examples of that in my past career, of people that were saying what to do but not doing it by themselves, that they are losing credibility. Furthermore, I mean, if you are a CEO and you have a strategy, you have a vision. Let's say you have a vision, okay, for your company. And based on that vision, you are establishing a strategy. By definition, you have a strategy of expansion, of innovation, whatever. If you want to show that innovation is important for you, you could say, you know what? The strategy we have decided with maybe the executive board should be tested as well with experimentations. And by doing that, he will get the respect of the employees of the company, because he's showing that himself is showing that, you know what, I might be wrong, and let's experiment to find a way. And we will find a way towards the vision. Maybe the strategy we have decided is not the right one, but in that case, we'll find another one. And if we experiment, then we'll find a way. If you are a CEO and you have a strategy, you have a vision. Let's say you have a vision, okay, for your company. And based on that vision, you are establishing a strategy. By definition, you have a strategy of expansion, of innovation, whatever. If you want to show that innovation is important for you, you could say, you know what? The strategy we have decided with maybe the executive board should be tested as well with experimentations. And by doing that, he will get the respect of the employees of the company because he's showing that himself is showing that, you know what, I might be wrong, and let's experiment to find a way. And we will find a way towards the vision. Maybe the strategy we have decided is not the right one, but in that case, we'll find another one. And if we experiment, then we'll find a way. So you will get trust and respect from the employees by doing that.
That's a very powerful message out there, Philippe. Yes, absolutely. Trust and respect by simply following your own words, right? Because there is no leader out there that say, no, I'm not going to innovate, right? Everyone, I think, right, trying to do the best they could, but yet, like you said, execution is everything. If you're not putting your money, if you're not investing within the company, people see that. You know, I've seen in my career many examples of, you know, when words and actions not exactly in sync. So this is very simple thought, but yes, so powerful. Philippe, we cannot not talk about innovation without bringing the big helper out there to all of us, okay? Artificial intelligence. I know we talked a lot about human element and you brought fantastic examples, really tangible, memorable, helpful for sure, right? Artificial intelligence, is it a helpful hand to innovation, or it's rather a shiny toy which is still very far-reached for many, many companies out there?
So no, it's a tool. It's definitely a tool, not shiny. It's a tool which has more and more momentum right now, and for good reasons. For good reasons, because artificial intelligence, well implemented, will provide very reliable output, and in a way which is not sustainable by humans in many respects. And I speak about specialized artificial intelligence, and we don't speak yet about general artificial intelligence, which is a dream that we all have, coming at some point to a singularity, which means when the intelligence will be much smarter than the humanity, actually. So I do believe that we are going to come to that at some point. And you know, you could have two scenarios about that. You could have the Skynet scenario. You remember Skynet? Skynet was the artificial intelligence in Terminator movie.
Right.
So basically, the machines against human. And I am an optimist. Actually, I belong to a specific organization in France, which is called League of Optimists. And I do believe that the scenario we'll get with artificial intelligence will be abundance, because it will help us to deal with a number of issues we are facing right now. So the climate change, for instance, is definitely one of them. The fact that we have natural resources on Earth which are depleted as well, so we need to find some solutions. We have a population on Earth which is as well increasing significantly, and it cannot grow in an infinite way. Earth is finite, and you cannot have an infinite growth within a finite environment. It doesn't work. So if we don't want to have wars, if we don't want to have epidemics like the COVID-19 that we have had recently, we need to find some solutions. And And yes, I do believe that we will have multiple outputs from various artificial intelligence that will help us in that respect to find some solutions. In the meantime, what we have seen recently, and again, thanks to COVID-19, we have seen many innovations coming up out of this pandemic. One of them being a new type of vaccines available, and now we have a number of labs working on this with this type of vaccines in order to deal with diseases we could not fight before, like HIV, like many other diseases that we have around the world. And many of them are using artificial intelligence in order to find the solutions. So I do believe that we have gone today through this threshold that artificial intelligence is not a shiny tool anymore. It is being used and it has excellent results. Again, in a specialized environment or with a specialized target. Today, if you don't consider artificial intelligence for your business, and whether you are a startup or a big company, I think it's a mistake. So it's a tool like electricity is necessary, like processors is a tool as well. It's not by itself that it will be something which is dangerous or not. It's the use we are doing with it. Okay, when I have people in front of me saying, but yeah, artificial intelligence, it's very dangerous. You can do crazy things with that. Yeah, sure. You take a knife, you can cook with a knife, and you can kill someone. It's the use you're making of it that makes the difference. It's exactly the same with artificial intelligence.
Absolutely. And what we just discussed with experiments, okay, huge field for experimentation is, right, applying artificial intelligence to different business pain points, different business problems, right, finding results, demonstrating the success, and demystifying. Don't you think demystifying AI as a mysterious, dangerous technology in a way that it's controllable, in a way what you mentioned is narrow AI applications, right, as a tool. Yep.
Yeah. So the best way to demystify it is to look at what is happening around you. I mean, typically when you're using your smartphone today with Siri or OK Google, you are using artificial intelligence, and it is seamless. Actually, I triggered my phone by saying that. But
Speaking
so
of, yep.
exactly. So I think the debate about is it dangerous or not it's just about the way we're using it. So if we have more and more use of artificial intelligence in tools, I mean, smartphones, look at graphic tools like Adobe Photoshop or Luminar set of tools as well. They are using artificial intelligence in order to better do some graphics work in a very quick way. So I think it's going to be so common, like, and I would say like electricity as well. It will be so common that people will not say it is dangerous. It is the use of it in some ways which is dangerous.
I'm an optimist in the same way, because if we look a little bit back, right, all the technology innovation we've seen in centuries, okay, it did look dangerous at first, and there were so many movements to oppose the natural advances of technology that it's now we're laughing at that, right? But it's exact same way. Electricity was very dangerous at first, right? Well, now we're looking at some funny examples.
Yeah. So basically, the artificial intelligence is going through the same path than many other revolutions. And there is a philosopher, Arthur Schopenhauer. He was a German philosopher of the 19th century. He said that any big idea is going through three steps. The first step, it is ridiculed. because people don't believe in it. Okay, the first time you speak about artificial intelligence, so let's say decades ago, people were laughing about it, and then at some point it is considered being dangerous, and people are fighting against it. And the last step, the third step, is it becomes evident, obvious. So we are still in the middle of step 2 today, where some people are considering it dangerous. And some people now believe it's absolutely obvious. So we need just to let people understand that it's not the tool by itself which is dangerous. That's it.
That's
And
it.
this will
Sounds
be,
very simple. Yes, yes, Philippe.
yeah, it's very simple. I mean, if you take, I have a great example about these 3 steps that I'm using in my talks usually. At the introduction of the iPhone in 2007 by Steve Jobs, it was in January at Macworld in San Francisco. He did this nice show introducing the iPhone, and then there was an interview of Steve Ballmer, who was the CEO of Microsoft at that point. And Steve Ballmer just ridiculed Apple by saying, okay, this machine is not interesting, this iPhone is not interesting, it doesn't have even a keyboard, which
Exactly.
is, you cannot use it as a professional. And by the way, Microsoft is selling millions and millions of phones per year, and Apple is selling 0 phones per year. Okay, so, and saying it was $500 subsidized, it was the most expensive phone ever. So he ridiculed Apple in that respect. And of course, what happened is the following, that the sales of Microsoft in the mobile world, let's say, decreased, and iPhone went up. So it became a very big danger for Microsoft, and they decided to fight. What they have done, they acquired Nokia. Okay, this has been the way for them to fight. It didn't work. So this was the second step. The third step is, okay, iPhone is obvious, so let's deal with that. And the current development systems of Microsoft, so MSDN, is usable to create applications for the iPhone. Okay, so this is, you've got the complete arc of those 3 steps with the example of the iPhone and Microsoft.
Perfect example, Philippe. You know, this is so memorable. I'm sure our audience will remember that. And this will be motivation and inspiration for those entrepreneurs to be, because, right, those examples just telling us for those who can drive this, right, those who really believe and can deliver,
Yeah.
you know, opportunities are endless, truly, Philippe.
Okay. So there is a twist anyway. It's not because an idea is considered by being ridiculous that it is a good idea.
Oh yeah, oh
So-
yeah, oh
so-
yeah, oh yeah. The fact that people laughing at you doesn't mean that you're a genius, okay? There are other
Yeah.
elements to that, but it's definitely food for thought. It's definitely food for thought, Philippe. I know you do a lot. You speak at a lot of places. You have the website. I will link to this video because you blog on these topics and it's enormously enriching. I so thank you, Philippe, for sharing all the experiences, all your own knowledge with our audience today. Can we maybe in closing leave everybody with few takeaways? I mean, we talked about, right, innovation, the human side, organizational side, technical side, and of course, right, the mindset, the innovative mindset. So how can we simply summarize, yes, with few takeaways?
Okay, so the first takeaway I have is that anyone, absolutely anyone, can innovate, given that you are in a context that promotes free expression. So this is the first point. The second point is, if you have to propose something as a new idea that can become an innovation, do your homework by experimenting a little bit on your side, and you can have some friends or colleagues experimenting with you. So you have to be convincing in that respect. Which comes to the third point. If you want to convince, it is good to understand the basics of public speaking, because you need to convince, you need to persuade. And having some skills of public speaking will definitely help you to convince some colleagues to help and experiment with you on your idea. So public speaking in that case means, of course, having the right storytelling about what you can do with the idea. And of course, it's not about manipulation. It's really about conviction. And if you are a CEO or a manager, you've got to question yourself about, am I showing the right example to my teams? Am I creating a culture in which people are able to express themselves in freely? So, because if you don't have that culture, you're going to stop people. So the responsibility, the duty here is pretty significant. That was my takeaways.
Beautiful, beautiful, Philippe. Thank you so very much for being such a wonderful guest at SaugaTalks today. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome, Irene.